If you can start to cultivate a relationship with yourself in which you truly treat yourself as someone who is deserving, it's not just lip service. It's not just something you read in a Tiny Buddha article, like, oh, self-compassion, this is a good thing, do that, because it's a good idea. No, like you can believe in it in the same way that the idealized grandmother really does believe that you are good and worthy and valuable and all of those things before you do anything.
Welcome to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast. I'm so glad you're here listening in as I get to the heart of the matter with the world's leading experts and authors in personal growth, transformation, positive psychology, and more. If you're a change maker, a cycle breaker, a revolutionary envisioning a more beautiful way to live, work, and play, well, me too. I'm your host, Ryann Watkin, and for the past decade, I've been alchemizing challenges to find the calm in the chaos. I believe we can change the world by starting at home in our own minds and hearts. And my hope is that these conversations are a light on your path. Let's go, wild ones. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast. This is episode 99. I am floored by that number and honored by that number and humbled by that number and really, really grateful that we are here on episode 99 of the Raising Wild Hearts podcast. And yes, I'm taking some time like in the next few weeks to really celebrate. It's been 2 years of almost consistent weekly episodes. I've taken a couple seasonal breaks here and there. But yeah, I'm really just celebrating that today and for the next few weeks. So I'd love it if you just stood in the gratitude with me for a little bit of how far the show has come, how many profound and heartfelt conversations we've had here. And on that note, if this podcast means something to you, if you've gotten something from this podcast, send your favorite episode to a friend because I know that everybody needs to hear much of what we are talking about here. And today's episode is no exception. Today I'm joined by Lindsey Carnick. Lindsey is the owner and founder of Onward Psychological Services, a private practice psychotherapy firm helping adult individuals and couples who want change. Known for her down-to-earth style, practical and tactical approaches, and humor, Lindsey believes that the changes we seek are always much closer than we think, that we are radically good enough before any kind of self-improvement, and that we're so much more than what we can imagine. Lindsey views her most meaningful accomplishment as working through her own toxic storylines so that she can be her real self, which is her best version. And so much of this conversation has all of this as a through line. We start off by talking about change. We talk about internal change versus external change. We talk about why change feels so hard. We talk about toxic narratives and how to shift them. We talk about authenticity, self-compassion, and more. Lindsey also drops a few amazing book recommendations, which I will be sure to drop down below. So if you want to check out Lindsey's recommended reading, look down below in the show notes. And yeah, I think that's it. Let's just jump in today with Lindsey Carnick.
Please note, the opinions and perspectives of guests on the Raising Wild Hearts podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Ryann Watkin or anyone associated with the Raising Wild Hearts podcast.
Hi, Lindsey. Welcome to the Raising Wild Hearts podcast.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're here. And I know this conversation is going to center around change. So the place I really feel we should jump off is, what can you say to someone out there listening right now who knows they are on the verge of change? Either they know the change is coming because they've decided, and or they are just simply desiring something different in their lives. What would you say directly to that person?
Congratulations. That's awesome. Change. I mean, so many of us want at different points in our lives something to be different. And we're also a little intimidated by that or overwhelmed by that or daunted by that, which is completely understandable. Most of us want something to be different and also have some kind of apprehension about the change process itself. Sometimes we're comfortably uncomfortable or uncomfortably comfortable, depending on the moment in time. So congratulations to anybody who's had the starting courage to recognize that they want something different, because that's huge and fundamentally necessary to getting something to actually be different. And that recognition is no small undertaking in and of itself. In fact, I might say that's the hard part. The actual change is maybe less daunting than coming to terms with wanting change itself and wanting something to be different and all the things that might entail.
Yeah. So what makes that actual decision and that awareness so hard for us? Is it because we're creatures of habit? Are we fearing change? Is it all of the above? Like, why are we so resistant to, even when we know we need or want something different, to saying, yes, this is like my stake in the ground and this is how I will change my life for the better? Why are we so resistant to that?
I'm sure there are more than one reason. The one that I would dial into specifically would be we're creatures of what I would call maladaptive habit, which means we have figured out something that in some point in time was helpful. The context was such that the behavior pattern we developed, or the cycle, or the habits as we're referring to them, was really helpful. It really worked well in the context and the environment that we were in at that point in time. And then the context changed on us. And those behaviors are no longer adaptive because the context changed. The behaviors now show up as maladaptive. And we could just say that they don't get us what we want, or they get us what we want in substandard ways or with other negative consequences and ramifications. It's a little bit, you could think about a sea creature, right? Fins are perfect if you are in the sea. Fins are great. If suddenly you're on land, fins are no longer helpful. Now, this doesn't make fins good or bad. Fins are sort of neutral. But when the context changes, that has really significant consequences for whether we judge something to be good, bad, helpful, unhelpful. And for most of us, the context is almost continuously changing. At the very least, hopefully, it's changed dramatically from when we were small to when we're adults to when we're large. So many of the adaptive fins that we sort of had that worked well for us at different stages in our lives no longer fit the context now that we've become land mammals, so to speak, or some other context change. And we've gotten so good at using that equipment that sometimes it's really hard for us not to double down on that and say, God, it has served me so well up until this point, even though it's usually not quite that conscious for us to think that way, right? Not quite that front of mind. But we have this sense that this pattern, this way of doing business has served us well and was adaptive, ergo, we double down on it. And usually that's where we kind of get stuck and into trouble. So it's hard to change behavior because usually those behaviors have been very successful at some point. And it's hard for us to give up on those. We want them to be successful again. And we sort of have this sense if we just do it more or more intensely or more frequently and the other people change or the world around us changes, then the things will be sort of in alignment again. The stars will be in alignment. I think that's why it's so hard because we've been rewarded for that not change for so long.
Yeah. The biggest example I can think of that in my life that's just coming top of mind right now is when I decided to quit drinking alcohol 5+ years ago. And for many, many years, like it served me very well, actually. It was a great coping mechanism. It was a great social lubricant. It was, how I met my husband ultimately, like in a bar, and so for many number of years, it was okay until it wasn't. And the manifestations of it started to become toxic. And I started to really realize that there were some issues throughout my whole life. I would be kind of angry or get really sad. And these were the things that I was pushing down in normal life that when I was numb enough would just like, boop, come up to the surface, and it would really be quite toxic. So, and my kids were young at the time. And my 2 older kids were young. I didn't even have my 3rd at that time. And so that's what I think of when I think of like that change. And I was creeping towards it for like a really long time. There was like a whisper, but then finally there was kind of that moment where I said, enough is enough. And you said something that sparks my interest because you said, if the other people change. So my other people, as it turns out, didn't change, aren't going to change, maybe never will change. My kids still need 3 to 7 meals a day. You know, my husband still has certain expectations for him. He still has to travel for work. All these different circumstances in my life remained the same and remain the same. And so what I'm finding is that there's this internal responsibility that I have to say, this is how I will change regardless of who out there is not changing, what external out there factor is not changing. So let's talk a little bit about internal change versus external change. Like, are those two different categories that you talk about in your practice? Like, how can we kind of break those down?
Oh, I love that. I love everything you just said. And I just want to add, I think part of what makes it often so difficult for people to do the thing we're talking about is that sense that, like, if I change, I'm sort of conceding that there's something wrong with me that needs to be changed, or something, it's some sort of referendum on this thing that I've been doing, which is a referendum on me. And that doesn't feel good, right? And we have to ask ourselves some really interesting questions there about who's me? Like, is me drinking? No, of course not. That's not who you are. That's a thing that you do, but that's not who you are. But so often when it comes to change, we see these patterns or traits or behaviors as part of ourselves. And to consider doing something differently is almost it has this ring to it we don't like we're saying that there is in fact something about us that needs to be changed. And that doesn't feel good, right? Because I think we overestimate the degree to which any one of those things is us. So, like, I would really like to keep my pinky finger. I'd like to keep both my pinky fingers. But God forbid, if I lost my pinky fingers, I would still be me. Yeah. My pinky fingers are not who I am. And again, this is not an experiment I want to run, but I would like to think that if I, God forbid, lost a hand or an arm or something like that, I would still be me. And I know that's true because people who are missing limbs are still themselves. It is not the having the arm or not having the arm that makes them, right? So changes in behavior, whether they're internal or external, and going towards that and being enthusiastic and curious about that doesn't mean that you've admitted that there's something wrong with you that needs to be changed. It's not about that at all. It's recognizing that something in your life, whether that's a behavior or internal or an external, is not a value add. It's a value subtract. And that you are more yourself without that, not less yourself without that. And that's really how I like to think about internal change in particular, is not that we're being told, and so many people have this sense that there's like something wrong with them, or there's something broken, something that needs to be fixed, right? Something that needs to be changed. And I think that is such an unfair, ungracious, unhelpful, and untrue sort of premise. I like to say that most people are carrying around these really heavy, ponderous, weighted coats, not in the good way, not in the weighted blanket sort of nomenclature, like in the way that you think of an old coat that just like weighs you down and allows you to not move freely through the world and feels like a burden. And change to me is letting that coat fall off your shoulders so you can be more yourself, not because something about you needed fixing, changing, realigning in order to be better. No, you're all in there. You're all in there. You're just probably carrying around extra shit that doesn't serve you and makes you less you.
Hey, it's me, Ryan. So something I do every single day to invest in my growth, besides connecting with the humans on this podcast, obviously, is reading. Reading is where it all started for me. I was 5 when I became obsessed with books, writing them, reading them, collecting them. I love how I can get inspired with new ideas and stories and ways to grow. That's why I ask all my guests what they're reading. And finally, you can check out all the book recommendations from the experts and authors on the show in one place at raisingwildhearts.com/books. There are some life changers in there like you are the placebo, and a few hidden gems like sacred motherhood and living, loving, and learning. So if you want to get your hands on your next great read, check out the full list by heading to raisingwildhearts.com/books. Okay, back to the show. Yeah, get rid of the shit, people. We can curse on this.
All right.
On this show, if you feel so called to.
Drop the shit coat is what I'm saying.
Yes, totally. Drop the shit coat, people. So that makes me think of, or really get the sense of, we're talking about a little bit of shame. And which brings me to this whole toxic storylines. I believe we all have them. Are they the same as limiting beliefs? And how do we first recognize that we've got this shit shame code on, or this limiting belief, bubble around us? And then how do we move to a more empowering narrative inside of our heads, starting with our thoughts and our feelings and that whole cycle?
So many roads lead to Rome on that one. Yes. And so many of us have come to recognize narratives about ourselves that we've held for a really long time in different ways. Yeah. And some of those have been very drastic, exciting moments of revelation. And some are much less so, right? Some are much quieter and sort of unfold over a long period of time.
Yeah.
I think a good first step is getting clear about how you feel about yourself in a very basic way. Do you feel like you're okay? Do you feel like you're waiting for somebody else to tell you you're okay? Do you feel that you have work to do before you're okay? Because I think that all sounds like a deficit starting point, right? There's something about me that needs changing. There's something about me that needs fixing. There's something about me that isn't up to par. And I think if you sense that in yourself, then you're probably carrying a little bit of a narrative that is not serving you and is also not true. So being aware of the degree to which we are even consciously thinking about how we think about ourselves, and not in the offhand self-deprecating way, right? That's a different thing altogether. Although there are some interesting questions we could ask about that, and we could ask about why we double down on that and how that serves or doesn't serve that part of us, sort of calling ourselves out before anybody else can, but in jest so that nobody thinks you're serious, because what would that mean?
Right.
Right.
Been there, done that.
As have I, and I still revert to that sometimes,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sort of interesting. So I don't actually remember what your original question was. I think it was something about the shame coat.
Totally. Yeah. We're just talking how do we step forward with a more empowering mindset, I guess it would be called. How do we know that we're telling ourselves this, when we look in the mirror, oh God, you look like shit, but almost we don't realize we're saying we look like shit, but then we feel bad the next time we look in the mirror, and sometimes we don't realize why. So then once we get to the realizing part, then how do we look in the mirror? This is an example, because I do this sometimes. I'll walk by the mirror and I'm like, God, who are you, woman? Who is that in the mirror? And because I've got 3 kids and there's pasta on me, and I'm I look at myself and I'm going, who are you? And so that's a big one for me. The look, the beauty, wow, you don't look like you did 10 years ago. Wow, you look different, and you've got a lot of fairy hair, which my girls call it, which is gray hair.
I love that.
And, so these kind of things, how do I, and because we've all got these different stories, look in that mirror, whatever that mirror is for someone listening, and start to shift that story. Is it an affirmation type thing? Is it how do we begin to kind of move forward in a more empowering way?
Well, firstly, I want to reference 2 other people who have said something remarkable about this. The first one's last name is Otto, and the second one, the last name is escaping me. But they wrote a book that came out, I believe, in the last year called Body Image, Body Self. And we're not specifically talking about that, but I think the point at the heart of their work is incredibly prescient and important. One of the things these 2 authors, and they are both clinicians, talk about in Body Image, Body Self is the importance of recognizing when self-judgment is a reflection of something else going on, as opposed to an actual judgment about something going on. So they use some really interesting examples that I think most women are very familiar with, and probably men too, although I think they experience it differently because in some ways we are, socialized vastly differently, and there's no two ways about that. It just is a fact. So they point to a specific example that I really resonated with me and resonates with a lot of people that I know and that I've worked with. And that example is this phenomenon. Most people, women in particular, have noticed that, say on a Monday, can look in the mirror and be like, okay, all right, yeah, yep. Look at you.
Yeah.
And Wednesday, nothing's changed. It's been 48 hours.
Yeah.
But you can look in the same mirror and be like, oh, how? Why? Doom, right? You're looking at the same person. You're wearing the same pajamas you were wearing on Monday. Like the outfit hasn't even changed. But somehow the perception of good enoughness in the physical sense has drastically changed in the last 48 hours. And you didn't get your face painted. You didn't get a haircut. Nothing has happened to your appearance. But between Monday and Wednesday, you're having this absolutely 180-degree reaction. And so the thing these two researchers point out, and I think this is such a good question because it's so obvious, it's hiding in plain sight, is like, well, if your body didn't change, your face didn't change, your haircut didn't change, your eyebrows, nothing changed, then how can you feel so damn differently from Monday to Wednesday? Something else must have changed. And P.S., it's on the inside.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, yeah, that tracks, right? This tracks. It makes sense. Look, if you get a terrible haircut and it's really the worst, okay, maybe Monday to Wednesday, this is a sensical, visceral reaction to what you're seeing. But short of that, right, it doesn't make any sense to say on Monday I was fine with my fill-in-the-blank cheekbones, and on Wednesday I'm not. What's changed is on the inside.
Yeah.
And that internal experience is being messaged to you on the outside.
Yep.
And so one of the things they talk about is how important this data is about your internal experience and understanding and appreciating your internal experience as it is messaged to you in kind of the external world. And I love that so much because I think it redirects our attention really powerfully to something we've been taught to ignore, or that we've been taught to only appreciate in ways that are socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Be in touch with your feelings, but only if they fit into this certain mold that is socially acceptable with this moment in time, vis-a-vis your positionality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Yeah, totally.
So I highly recommend that book for anybody, including people who do not struggle with body image questions or issues, because I think it's such a novel and helpful and refreshing take on how we understand and ignore our internal experience and how we can sort of be more curious about that. And we could say the same thing about, one day feeling great about a job and the next day feeling terrible about a job, even though nothing's changed. Or one day feeling super confident about XYZ and Wednesday feeling not super confident, even though nothing's happened, right? These have to be reflections of internal oscillations, not actual changes in the job, your cheekbones, or whatever it is the thing is. So I think starting to I say that all as a long way of saying that starting to recognize that these internal experiences we're having oscillate profoundly, right? And have profound implications for what we're thinking. Mm-hmm. And then we get wedded to the thoughts as problems that have to be solved, right? So, let's use a really concrete example. Monday, I look in the mirror and I'm like, not bad, right? Wednesday, I look in the mirror and I'm like, and whatever I assign that to, I don't know, let's pick something, my cheekbones. Now I'm like, and now this is something that has to be solved. This is a problem. It wasn't a problem Monday, but now it's a problem and it's going to make me feel better when I solve it. Of course it's not. It's not a real problem if it wasn't a problem on Monday too, right?
Yeah.
So our attention is being distracted onto things we feel like we can solve.
And then you're on looking for a new blush or a new highlighter or a plastic surgeon or the fill in the blank, right?
Yes. And there's an unlimited amount of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's an unlimited amount of ways in which we're sold solutions to problems we don't have, but that are much easier to latch onto than the problems we do have, because those problems usually aren't as simple as pick out a new foundation. So it's very appealing, right? To be like, oh yeah,
Yes.
let me just go hit the Walgreens or Sephora and I can handle this in an hour. As opposed to, I feel heartbroken. Oh, I don't think there's anything in Walgreens for that.
They're not selling that. They're not selling that.
No. Sephora would like to tell you they are, but
for sure.
I'm not clear that they do. I don't think so. Right? So we've allowed ourselves, understandably so, to become distracted by problems that are not real problems because they're easier to solve than real problems. And that's attractive.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm obsessed with this answer. And to bring it all full circle, I am reflecting on those moments when I'm looking in the mirror and going, oh, you hag. And I think probably many times what it comes down to is that I've been overstretched, overworked, I'm overserving, overgiving, overmothering, overnourishing everybody else. And I've left myself to the wayside on those days. So whether I skipped my shower or my walk or my, journaling, whatever it is that day, right? And so I can really now reflect on that internally, and that tracks. It makes so much sense.
And you said something, I don't know if you meant it, but it was so interesting. You said the external sentiment was, oh, you hag.
Yeah.
Oh, you feel haggard.
Yes.
Haggard is being pulled in too many directions, is being stretched thin, is being out of energy, right? But it becomes this externalized quality. And what interesting data about what really you need, right?
I can't tell you the last time I used it. I don't use that word, so that's funny that was the word that came out. Haggard. Yeah. Totally worn down.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing reflection.
You don't look haggard. You feel haggard.
You feel haggard because you're, on those days I'm being stretched super, super thin. Okay. I love that.
They're so good. It's such a good book. Cannot recommend highly enough.
Yeah. Body image, body self. Okay, cool. We'll put that in the notes because around here
it might be the body self, body image, but you'll find out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll figure it out and we'll put it in the notes. We've got a long book list going on around here. So I want to not so gracefully segue into authenticity. And, we've mentioned like, who are you, and we've kind of hinted at it. Like, who are you? Who am I? How do we get to the root of, oh, this is really me in my
why do we care?
Full glory? And why do we care? And is it because we think that other people want us to be so authentic and, this kind of a thing? So what are maybe some myths around authenticity and kind of your take on it from where you're standing today?
Well, I think a couple of things for me, certainly personally, as well as my experience professionally. I think the emphasis on authenticity has a little bit of a dark side, in the sense that I think, yes, we all crave being in spaces and with people where we feel we can be genuine and uncensored and be whoever, be who you are. I don't know. I'm a work in progress. I'm not sure I could pin down at any given moment who I am. That seems like a lofty existential order that I'm not quite up to, quite personally.
It's a big question. I'm like, Enneagram 4, Myers-Briggs, INT.
Exactly.
Whatever. Like
but also 500 other billion people are that. So is that, right?
Correct.
I don't know.
It is a funny thing.
It's a funny thing. So I want to be genuine. Yeah. I want to feel free to be genuine with the people I'm with and in the context I'm in. That's important to me. Authenticity, interestingly, has taken on to me a performative quality because there's so much emphasis on being authentic. Now people feel pressured to be authentic, which is not authentic, right? Yes. I'm not sure what it means anymore. I'm sure I know what the dictionary definition is. I'm not sure what that means in any given context. I think it means a lot of different things to different people. I will tell you that something that I've come to terms with and that I'm actually writing about right now in the book I'm working on is a really problematic mistake that many of us are making about authenticity. And the mistake is thinking or feeling that authenticity has anything to do with blowing somebody out of the water when you're mad, etc. Blowing somebody out of the water when you're mad is an example of a mistake, I believe. Yes, it's a judgmental word, mistake we're making about the nature of authenticity, in which we've confused unbridled, uncensored, one-to-one externalization of how we're feeling in a given moment with being authentic. I am enraged, ergo I rage on you. And that's authenticity.
I'm just speaking my truth and you
That's
suck.
100%.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And if your feelings are hurt, too bad for you, because I'm being authentic is my God-given right. Well, sure, yes, 100%. People have lots of God-given rights, or however you think you get your rights. Fine. Sure. I'm not sure that's being authentic. I'm sure it's being raw. It's a little bit to me when people confuse bluntness with honesty.
Yeah.
Those are not exactly the same thing, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
There's some overlap that happens in one direction that's not in the other direction. So I think we all owe it to ourselves to do some reflection on what authenticity means to us individually, and not let that be defined for us by other people, and also not get sucked into sort of the thinking trap that authenticity is permanence or is a static state, which I think people do. I think people are in a big hurry to figure out who I am and then be able to serve that up on a platter to other people and have it be the authentic version, TAV in caps, right? TAV. And that's really limiting. Do you remember, I think it was Mitt Romney who was famously called a waffler, and people were like, oh, and then the worst thing you could be was a waffler. I don't know why that word.
Is that like switching sides? I don't remember that. Okay.
Yes,
I live
exactly.
under a rock when it comes to anything politics.
It stuck with me because I like waffles.
Okay.
And that really, I was like, I feel like waffles have been unfairly drug into this conversation.
I can get down with waffles too. Yeah. So it was bad to be a waffler because then you switch sides.
It was bad to be a waffler. Yes.
Right?
It means you have no solid state. You have no authentic state. You're just always sort of this opportunist of the moment who's saying whatever to whoever.
Sure. Okay.
And, you know, it's interesting you mentioned chameleons, because chameleons do have a color.
And
they're sort of brown-green.
A natural color.
Yes.
It also seems like a superpower to be a chameleon in a way.
Yeah,
so at what point does that get toxic, right?
But I mean, I think we could also say, ironically, that the superpower is hiding from being real. I mean, that's what chameleons are doing, is trying to blend in and hide.
Got it. Yep. Okay, got it. Hiding. Oh, okay. And she's called out by the therapist once more. I love it. Okay, yes.
Not at all, but I am very literal. Great. And they are literally hiding. That's why they change colors to not be recognized.
Yes.
For their true selves. They want to blend in and not be meat, right? Not be somebody's dinner.
Right.
So I think it's maybe interesting to entertain the idea that, like, my authentic self, at least for me, like I feel like that's a moving target. And I don't think that makes me a waffler. And I don't think that makes me inconsistent. And I don't think that makes me unpredictable. I think that's a recognition that I am hopefully very open to evolution, my own personal evolution. And I hope to God that's happening on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think I'm different this morning, 2 hours ago, than I am now, or 2 hours from now. But I don't know, something life-changing could happen.
Right.
I hope
because
not.
we respond to our circumstances. We respond to the external things that we don't have control over. Right. And we need to adapt and acclimate based on those things, whether that's family or work or name all the things, you know, that
and
are
what
out there.
doesn't serve us, you know. You wake up one morning and maybe it's over a long period of time and you're like, you know what? Alcohol is not a value add in my life.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay. And at some point in time it was, or it served some purpose or whatever. Fine. That didn't mean you weren't authentic now. It doesn't mean that you're not authentic now because it's different. Yeah. It means that we're hopefully open to evolution and growth, and that's all change. And that means that the authentic you of X number of days or minutes or hours or weeks ago is not going to be the same as is it now, or 2 weeks from now, or 2 years from now. And same could be true of myself. So I would really like to encourage us all, myself definitely included, to sort of be open to treating the idea of authenticity with a little bit of a smile and a little bit of a wink, and saying that maybe we could define our values. I value being genuine.
Yep.
And I'm going to be diligent about being genuine as often as I can, to the best of my knowledge, with the information I have at any given time.
Yeah.
And if I look like a waffler with syrup and peanut butter.
Oh, yes. That's a favorite in the household here.
Oh, so good.
Yes, yes.
10 minutes from now or 2 hours from now, so be it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be constrained by trying to avoid looking like something or not like something, right? If I change, I change. If I do, I do. But I'm going to be honest, because honesty is one of my values. Genuineness is one of my values. Kindness is a value. These are values that I think will be very consistent. And I think being in those values is always authentic for me, because those are truly my values.
Yeah.
I don't know how much further we can define it.
Yeah, that's so interesting for me too. What comes up is that I look back, and this is work that I've been unpacking behind the scenes here. So I look back at myself in my 20s and even early 30s before I had kids, and kind of right in that new mom era. And I think of her as like super fun and carefree. And my nickname used to be Maximum Fun. And I just was like, I was just really fun. And things are a little different now because, you know, my external circumstances have changed. I have 3 children, 10 and under. And yes, I can be like the fun mom, but it's a different kind of fun. It looks different. It feels different, the whole thing. And so for me, one of the things that has not changed, and this is just a light bulb moment as we're talking and kind of unraveling this here, is that to me, my favorite compliment to ever get is, "You've got great energy." And to me, that's a mirror that I am showing up genuine, because I'm feeling this kind of love and flow and presence, and people can feel that. So they're mirroring it back to me. And I think that's what I think back to that fun girl in her 20s, that she was high energy or good energy or, you know, positive or fun and made people feel good. And so I think that it's such a testament to how we evolve over time. But perhaps the authenticity piece is like that through line that never changes. Many, many other things kind of change around it, but maybe there's this kind of like spine of the book that stays consistent.
I love that. And maybe part of what I love about your saying is you're pointing to a very narrow band of consistency. Like, you know, this is this good energy thing. That is at its core my most authentic self with the fewest coats, right?
Yeah.
And other things may sort of swirl around that or change around that or sort of be stapled on at various points in time, right? But that is the through line. And I love that so much because it's so internal to you, right? Mm-hmm. This is a deeply personal soul quality, as opposed to I'm authentically a person who does pottery, or I'm authentically a this or a that. I don't know. Those things can change, right? And some things don't change. So maybe that's, you know, a good way to think about it is like, what is the most salient part of yourself that is not subject to change? That's your authentic self. And it's much simpler than perhaps I think many people think of authenticity as this very like complete picture of like, I'm authentically these things, this constellation of personalities and traits and likes and dislikes, and those are my authentic. Nonsense. You have food poisoning, you won't like that food anymore. I don't care how much you love it anymore. That's not authentically you.
Oh, we just went through a stomach thing here, and I can attest to that for sure. There are some things that made my list that will never be gracing this mouth again.
Exactly.
Yes. It's so true. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really healthy, open-minded way to look at it. We don't need to nail ourselves down with all these external things. We don't have to have one answer. And 2 hours from now, I'm like, you know, I may feel differently about something that I said. And I think so often it's like this fear of judgment, perhaps, that we are kind of anxious about or afraid about showing up and saying something different than we did 2 hours, 2 years, 2 weeks ago, because maybe the people in our lives are going to go, hey, that's not you. You know, I've had people go, friends and family go, oh, I know you. you're not that, or I know you. And that's like one of those little, like kind of daggers for me of like, oh, really? You know, and like old kind of people pleaser me would go, really? Is that not me? I don't know. Tell me who I am. I don't know. Am I that? Am I not that? But I think there's this steadfast place we can get to with much, much practice where we don't fear that judgment. So what's your take on maybe self-judgment and then fearing judgment from others as well? Is it the same thing?
I'm 100% on board with you. I think that is a huge fear for most of us. And I think some of us cope with it more elegantly at other times than others, but I think it's a universal fear because the most universal fear there is for humans is abandonment, because early in the good old days, abandonment was death. And quite frankly, I like to say we're running new software on very old hardware. Yeah. And that hardware hasn't changed one iota since humans started walking upright and before then. So our fear of judgment is on a continuum of our fear of people not liking us, on a fear of they don't like us, they might vote us off the tribe, onto the ice flow, and then we're goners, right? So we do, most of us on a cellular level, sort of flinch at judgment, and certainly judgment of the kind of you're talking about, where people are going like, oh, that doesn't seem like you. And you're like, oh God, I certainly do want to seem like myself so that I can stay in the tribe and not be put on ice flow, because that's bad, right? And it elicits in us this very primordial sort of like, sort of fear and anxiety. So I completely agree with that. I think self-judgment is usually the sort of old brain's way of trying to keep us from doing anything that might get us more judgment from others, that might get us off the ice flow. It's sort of a check. It's the first line of defenses against, being judged by others, is to judge yourself faster and get to it, mop that up before anybody notices, before anybody is the wiser.
Don't do that. So, they're going to see that you're different. Don't do that. They're going to see that you're fill in the blank.
100%. 100%.
Even if you're changing for the good, like, might I add, even if you're like, doing the work and really showing up as, let's not say authentic, but as yourself, as a happier person, you're feeling fulfilled internally. And then you show up to the family gathering and they're like, wait a minute, who's this? But you're like feeling good. And you're like, Ryann or Lindsey, like 2.0, 3.0, 5.0. And your family or your friends are going like, wait a minute, we don't know if we like that.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Yeah.
For sure. 100%. Right. Because systems like equilibrium, and even when the equilibrium's unhealthy, or shall we say not optimal, suboptimal.
Yeah.
And so when you disrupt the equilibrium, nobody's going to throw you a parade. They're going to go, the hell, get back to where you started. We don't like disturbance around here.
Get back down there.
That's right.
The crab in the bucket.
You play the role you have always played, because that is how the system maintains equilibrium, and that makes everybody except for you feel comfortable. So equilibrium disturbers are not usually received with open arms. And that comes out in the shape of judgment and criticism, so that the person then feels like they need to check themselves, right? And be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't. Did you read Holly Whitaker's book, Quit Like a Woman?
No. What is it?
Quit Like a Woman?
Quit Like a Woman. Nope, that's on
for any human who's ever reevaluated their relationship to alcohol.
Oh,
any human.
Oh, yes. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Great book.
Yep.
One of the things she talks about is how floored she was, and her sort of journey to her relationship with alcohol now, which is abstinence, which she's not advocating anything, by the by, for anybody curious. It's not a book that says you should be doing anything at all. There's no recommendation. It's a book that suggests that we all owe it to ourselves to be evaluating what things in our lives add value and what things subtract value, and in what quantities. That's it. That's it. But part of her journey that she talks about so eloquently, and it is truly a wonderful book. I've recommended it to as many men as women, and men are also floored by it. It's just a great book. It's a great book for anybody. She talks about the absolute pushback she got from all these people in her life when she started reevaluating her relationship to alcohol, which P.S. did not start out as, she didn't go out of the gates telling everybody that they should quit drinking and because she was quitting. No, she just started declining cocktails at parties and people were just aghast, and they really gave her a hard time. I bet you had that experience. I mean, common.
Yes, I did. I remember very distinctly being at a party and this person going, come on. And everybody's already, 3 sheets to the wind at this part. And me just standing there like really in my power going, no, thank you, but I'm still enjoying myself. Thanks. But that took quite a bit of internal groundedness and, I don't even know the word. Just
incredible resolve, I'm guessing.
Incredible resolve. Devotion to what I knew was the truest and most beautiful, to quote Glennon Doyle, way for me to live.
Yes.
At a party or not at a party.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Holly Whitaker points to is that when we do something differently, other people intrinsically feel criticized.
Yes.
Even though it has nothing to do with them. If you stop doing something or start doing something or change what you're doing, the people who are still doing the thing that you were doing can't help but go like, so what are you saying? I'm not saying anything.
About me.
Yeah, like this is not about you, right? But it feels like a critique. So we're really sensitized to that, and again, we're sensitized to not wanting to disturb these equilibriums because on some level it goes back to the survival instinct we have to keep everybody happy and stay in the tribe and not get put on an ice floe, which is understandable. The problem is the old brain doesn't understand that getting put on an ice floe is not the threat it once was for many reasons. A, you're an adult. You can fend for yourself, and B, there are no ice floes anymore. It's not a thing, and people aren't getting put on them, right? We can take care of ourselves. Being voted out of the tribe while it doesn't feel good is no longer a threat to life and limb in most parts of the world.
Right.
So, all that to say that self-judgment usually is a preemptive strike on other judgment, right? It's a way of trying to keep ourselves safe from being judged by other people, which is incredibly profoundly painful because we have this background, this psychobiological background that says, avoid upsetting other people at all costs, avoid being deemed not good enough at all costs because you'll get put on an ice floe. So part of our task, I think, as adults is to be super accepting of the reality that it feels that bad, and also simultaneously hold in the other hand that while it feels like a threat to life and limb to have other people judge you harshly, it's not a threat to life and limb to have other people judge you harshly. And it's hard to hold those two things at the same time because the feelings are so powerful and we just want to do anything to avoid it or fix it or ameliorate it or change their minds or make it go away. And starting to cultivate a little bit of a healthy detachment and also a healthy appreciation of how gun shy our egos are, and be able to turn to our own egos and go, oh, I know that really hurts. I know that feels really bad. I know everything in you right now wants to run after that person and correct the thing that they just thought or said or indicated about you because that just rankles you. And also, let me be the first to reassure you. If that person walks the earth with that judgment about you for the rest of days, you're still not getting put on an ice floe.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. You can, in fact, live with judgment.
Yeah.
You do live with judgment all the time. You just don't know about it.
Yeah. Right. I don't remember who I'm quoting, but like what other people think about you is none of your business. Is I feel 100%. Like one of my coaches have said that. I'm like, oh, that's good.
And parentheses, you couldn't possibly keep track of all the things that people think about you. Don't worry about it. Like there's so many things people think about you that you don't know to worry about. Right. And it's not hurting you.
Well, most of the time, it's not even about you, too. I would venture to say, I know when I'm judging somebody, it's about me.
100%.
It's about my reflections and why I'm feeling like shit and I'm blaming it on this person or whatever.
100%. 100%.
So I think so many of these like cycle breakers who are here, right? And myself included, like, we're parenting differently. We're showing up in relationship differently. We're working differently. We're doing all these things differently than what was handed down to us. And so we can like relate to this so viscerally. And I think there's a tool that we need on the way, which is self-compassion. And, you've talked a lot about like how we can take care of ourselves mentally, really, like, and how still, if we can unpack it even more, do we access this self-compassion, this, it's okay, I got you, love, like, I'm here, this kind of old
Yeah.
wise part of ourselves that can
Yeah.
kind of hold us, in these hard moments.
I think, one of the most helpful things I've ever heard, and I don't know where I heard it, was that your relationship with yourself is going to be the longest one you have. And if you can think about that idea for a second of the longest relationship you're going to have. And I think many of us immediately conjure up, I really didn't have relationships with my grandmothers. I didn't know them. I didn't have, But like for me, for some reason that conjures up a relationship with a grandmother. Like I think of that as this very long relationship that I would like people to have, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the one that comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
And when I imagine that, I also imagine this like lovely grandmotherly figure and how they would speak to someone.
Mm-hmm.
And not only, I think this is really important, how they would speak. It's not just speaking. They believe it. It's not empty. And so if you can start to cultivate a relationship with yourself in which you truly treat yourself as someone who is deserving, it's not just lip service. It's not just something you read in a Tiny Buddha article, like, oh, self-compassion, this is a good thing, do that, because it's a good idea. No, like you can believe in it in the same way that the idealized grandmother really does believe that you are good and worthy and valuable and all of those things before you do anything. And even when you do things that are perhaps not in total alignment with your values, which we've all done and we will all continue to do, that doesn't detract from your good enoughness. And so my suggestion to people, myself included, is to cultivate that relationship with myself so that I'm always the co-signer. I don't want to be a hostage to someone else having to co-sign on me being good enough. That's a dangerous position to be in. It doesn't mean that I think, when we're not talking about ego here. It doesn't mean that I think I'm above mistakes or fallibility or deep human flaws. I have all of those things in spades, absolute tidal waves. And I also cultivate a relationship with myself where I'm in charge, no one else. I'm in charge of saying, okay, you did the best you could. You did the best you could. That was the information you had at the time. I know you feel bad about that because ultimately the results weren't in alignment with your values. And you know what? I'm glad you feel bad about that. That's a good sign that you have those values, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, and tomorrow's a new day. Next 5 minutes is a new 5 minutes, right? Every minute is the first minute of the rest of our lives. And there's a big difference between saying I'm being kind to myself because it's a good idea, right? And it's a hack and it's a life hack, and saying I'm going to cultivate that relationship with myself because it's going to open up an incredible world to me. And it's a pathway to being the most authentic version of myself, whatever that means. Because deep down, if there's one sort of quality I identify with, it's sort of grace and compassion. And so how am I being authentic if I'm not showing that to myself? How am I being genuine if I do that for other people, but not myself? And that means not just in the same way that I would never just say that to another person. I can't just be saying that to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is that it's wisdom embodied. That is what came to me. And so that's beautiful because it's not like the quote on the mirror. It's not like the Pinterest board filled with like the self-care things that we're going to do. It's like truly accessing that, for me, it's like the soul, the higher self, the part of us who is unchanging, the part of us that authenticity doesn't even mean anything to because we always were and always will be, right?
Yes.
It's that part that I'm really sensing.
Do you read Anne Lamott?
Yes, I do. I love Anne.
Anne Lamott had this fabulous essay a million years ago that I cannot find my copy of, nor you would think with the interwebs, I thought you could find anything. Yeah. Apparently not true. There was this wonderful piece that Anne Lamott wrote years ago. And in this piece, she has this episode where something's in her craw and she's driving home and she involuntarily pulls into the grocery store and she goes to the back to the bakery. And you know how the bakery always has some of those bulk bins? Have you read this piece? Do you know what I'm talking
I
about?
think so. I think I know what you're
About the
talking
bear
about.
claws? All right.
I
For
think so.
listeners who don't know
For
this
some reason, it was a
piece-
cake in my head. But yes, please
Okay.
keep telling us.
I might be wrong. It might have been cake.
Yeah.
In my version, she goes into the bulk section of the bakery where they have the bagels and baguettes and what have you. And she gets the pastry box or bag or whatever it is. And she gets the tissue and she gets like 8 bear claws. And they're huge, right? These are like giant bear claws.
It's like as big as your head.
Yes,
Yes.
100%. And she goes home and she's upset about whatever she's upset about. And she eats the first bear claw. And then she eats the second bear claw. And then I don't remember how far this goes. But by the time it sort of comes to a head, she's like hysterical and snotty and covered in sugar and icing and glaze and like on the floor of her kitchen, surrounded in bear claw shrapnel, right? Just like evidence of a massacre, of a bear claw massacre of the first order. And she's so horrified, right? And she immediately starts a shame spiral, right? About the bear claws, about all the things. And somehow, and I wish I remember the details, but something sort of flicks her in the head. And she has the presence of mind to recognize that if she had found her friend in this situation, this is crying, hysterical, and covered in bear claw on the kitchen floor. This is not how she would treat her friend.
Yeah.
And she takes herself into her bathroom and like washes her face and like puts on fresh PJs and like goes to the work of comforting herself in her moment in which for her it's the hardest to comfort herself. Mm-hmm. And we don't have enough opportunities nor enough support in comforting ourselves when we're covered in sugar and bear claw and snot. And that's when we really need it. And of course, that's when we most resist. Because we're busy saying, I'm not deserving of it. I'm not deserving of comfort. I'm not deserving of compassion. I ate 5 bear claws, or whatever it is you're saying to yourself. And we have to flip that script to where we recognize that just like every other person, when we are in our greatest hour of need, when we are snotty and covered in icing on the kitchen floor, when we've done something we feel terrible about, is when we absolutely must show up for ourselves with compassion and comfort and love. And that to be kind to yourself in those moments is not letting yourself off the hook for bad behavior. This is unrelated. It's that we can't possibly begin to repair with ourselves or with other people when we're coming from a point of disconnection. And anger and hostility and judgment is disconnection. And so if you've done something that you feel badly about, you've hurt somebody's feelings, or you've made a mistake and that's caused somebody else pain, okay. Holding your own feet to the fire is not the answer. And being kind to yourself is not letting yourself off the hook or giving yourself a free pass. It's giving yourselves the tools to reach out and reconnect and repair with that person. It's giving you the resources to do the right thing and get back in alignment with your authentic values.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with a free pass. And I think that's why people skip it. They feel like they already effed up and now they're going to be harder on themselves. Oh, well, I'm not going to give myself a free pass for effing up. Who learns from that? Well, let me tell you what people don't learn from. More abuse from themselves. That just drives them deeper in the shame cycle.
Right. And then I would imagine also, which you hinted at, would probably mess up most of their relationships as well.
100%.
Then you're not showing up as like grounded, present, compassionate, willing to apologize for one.
100%.
And then like kind of repair too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because when we heap abuse on ourselves, right, then we are creating the illusion that we can't, we're bad and we can't repair. And that we're digging ourselves deeper into the hole and further away from all the things that we say we value.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I could talk to you for a billion more hours. This conversation has been so profound. I know everybody listening is going to want to follow you and find the amazing work you're doing in the world. So where can we do that, Lindsey?
Thank you. I would refer to Instagram at Onward Psych Services. I publish practical, tactical videos about coping with silly stuff that are really quite a joy for me. LinkedIn, don't do much on Facebook, but I'm there. Instagram, my website, www.onwardpsychservices.com. And I have a phone number. I pick up the phone. You know, those things make calls.
That's revolutionary.
You can talk into it.
That's revolutionary.
Yeah.
So all you texters out there, or all you old school people who like the phone call,
yeah,
find
my
Lindsey's
phone number is all over my
that.
website. Feel free to call. Leave a voicemail.
Leave a
I'll call you
voicemail.
back.
Yeah, that's how that works. We have a landline because, our kids are at the point where they want to like start calling each other, and I'm like, and they're like, have their friends calling my cell phone. I'm like, tell them to call the landline, and nobody else has a landline. They're like, what? Landline? What is that? And I think it's hilarious. But anyway, it's amazing. It's amazing. So as we now wrap up, we're a few minutes over, sorry, but I'm going to ask you the 3 questions I ask everybody at the end of the interview. And the first one is, what's bringing you joy today?
Today? In this moment?
Yeah.
My 16-year-old who was practicing driving on the way to school pointed out to me how beautiful the trees were. Because they were coated in ice and snow.
That's so sweet. I love that. That brings me joy. Love nature. You're in Colorado, right? Is it okay? Amazing. You guys are just getting dumped on still there with snow, huh?
We are. Yeah, okay. It's actually quite unusual.
Yeah, right? Okay. And then the next question I have for you, which you've already given us a few great recommendations, but what, if anything, are you reading right now?
I like to reread. I'll give you guys a reread recommendation.
Okay.
It's called You Are the One You've Been Waiting For by Richard. I know, doesn't just that title, you're like, Richard Schwartz.
I just want to
change your life.
Myself. Okay, so it's interesting, like certain phrases and certain things, like little good omens. I don't know if you've read The Alchemist. It's one of my favorite fiction books, but they call it like good omens, like synchronicities. And you are the one you've been waiting for is a phrase that just has been coming up into my awareness lately. And so now that's skipping to the top of the list.
Very important book. Every time I read it, I get something else out of it.
Okay. Amazing.
And I've never had a person, I mean, I'm probably about to disappoint someone, but I've never had a person to whom I've recommended that book be disappointed.
Okay, perfect. Great. And then the last question I have for you is, who or what has taught you the most?
Oh my goodness. I think I'm going to say curiosity.
I love that.
I certainly have had a lot of people who have taught me a ton of things.
Yeah.
But I think when you're curious, you're open to it.
Yeah.
Right. And that makes a big difference in how much you ambiently soak up, even in unexpected moments.
I love that it's something internal because it just really brings this whole conversation full circle of like the inside work. So thank you so much again, Lindsey.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute joy.
Hi again, friend. If you're listening to this, you made it to the end of a Raising Wild Hearts episode. Yay! Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you can hear more amazing conversations just like this one. And here's the deal. If you made it this far, go ahead and hop down on your podcast app and rate and review the show. Your words and 5 stars truly mean the world to me. Thank you for your support of the show. Thank you for showing up and listening week after week. I will be dropping new episodes every Monday, so tune in then, and I will talk to you soon.